this Tuesday night, the intensifying trade war between the U.S. and China.
It was a mistake for China to retaliate.
The midnight deadline and how Canadians could be caught in the crossfire.
It's significant. You have the two big economic gorillas starting to fight.
America's beefed up border.
You don't have any rights.
New concerns about phones being searched and other advice for travelers. Nightclub nightmare. The deadly roof collapse in the Dominican Republic. Plus, dire traits. A bioscience company says it's resurrected a long-extinct species of wolf. The colossal claim and ethical debate.
Global National with Donna Friesen. Reporting tonight, Jeff Semple.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. We appear to be just hours away from an unprecedented escalation in the global trade war involving the world's two largest economies. The White House confirms that after midnight, Chinese imports into the U.S. will be hit with a whopping 104% tariff. It comes after the U.S. and then China imposed 34% tariffs on the other. The White House issuing a final warning for Beijing to back down.
America is punched, he punches back harder. That's why there will be 104% tariffs going into effect on China tonight at midnight. But the president believes that she and China want to make a deal.
It made for another volatile day on the stock markets. After Monday's historic lows, trading started strong this morning, but that rally was short-lived. U.S. stocks closing in negative territory, with the S&P 500 capping off its worst four-day stretch since the financial crash in 2008.
The tariffs are on, and the money is pouring in at a level that we've never seen before. And it's going to be great for us. It's going to be great for other countries. This has been something used against us for many years by other countries, China in particular.
The American president is facing frantic calls tonight to immediately reverse course. Jackson Proskow reports from Washington.
Is the policy working right now?
Under fire over tariffs, President Donald Trump's top trade negotiator faced questions over the market slump and the increasingly shaky economy.
This adjustment may be challenging at times, and in a moment of drastic overdue change, I'm confident, I'm certain that the American people can rise to the challenge as they've done before.
As global markets continue their roller coaster ride, the Trump administration claims dozens of countries have come looking to make a deal to avoid the supposedly non-negotiable tariffs. So far, no one has been given a reprieve.
We will have the tariffs in place, and if the other countries can come to an agreement on reciprocal trade, then that's something that the president can consider.
Lawmakers from both parties are increasingly nervous about the uncertainty and the growing risk of a recession.
I mean, my God, it's a stability issue. You know, businesses hate uncertainty.
And I think you're going to have more economic chaos, and that's not what people hired Trump for.
There's real fear about the escalating trade war with China in particular. Trump imposed tariffs totaling 104% on Chinese imports after Beijing retaliated against Trump's initial 34% tariff.
I think it was a big mistake, this Chinese escalation.
Resorting to pressure, threats and blackmail is not the right way to engage with China. China will take all necessary countermeasures to resolutely safeguard its legitimate and lawful rights and interests.
In this war of words, there's no sign Trump is willing to back down. The White House remains firm in its view that the U.S. can go it alone and be better for it.
Deals will only be made if they benefit American workers and address our nation's crippling trade deficits.
Even if negotiations with major countries get underway soon, there's no reason to believe they'll bring a swift end to the tariffs. NAFTA renegotiations during Trump's first term took 2 years, and that involved just 2 other countries. Jeff?
All right, Jackson Proskow in Washington. Thanks, Jackson. The escalating trade tensions will also be felt here in Canada, from the supermarket to the shopping mall. And Gaviola reports on the impact for Canadian consumers and why prices for some goods, including gas, could actually come down.
It's significant. You have the two big economic gorillas starting to fight.
The escalation of the U.S.-China tariff war stands to touch every industry across Canada, every household.
It's on manufacturing inputs, it's on agriculture, it's on food, it's on clothing, it's on retail goods. Their entire supply chain has been thrown into chaos.
Generally speaking, supply chain complications raise costs for businesses, and they pass those along to consumers. Call it tarifflation. But for goods manufactured in Asian markets slapped with hefty U.S. tariffs, that may mean eventual discounting. That includes brands labeled designed in Canada, but made in China.
If the U.S. and China start to close their markets to one another, there's going to be a lot of surplus goods that are floating around in the global trade systems.
This complicates a push within the apparel industry to move production out of China to Asian countries with a better human rights record. Another financial impact, lower prices at the pumps. A direct result of the consumer carbon tax going from 17.6 cents a litre to nothing. And the price of oil on global markets fell to levels not seen since 2021. Analysts say there's more relief coming.
In addition to the carbon tax pause sending gas prices down, now we have the prospect of a huge drop in the price of oil, which is going to translate to more gas price decreases.
Oil's price decline has two drivers. Investors doing the math. The greater likelihood of a worldwide economic downturn in the cards equals less demand. And OPEC Plus, the alliance of oil-producing nations, is increasing production.
It's going to be rather painful, potentially, for Canadian oil producers and American oil producers.
Savings at the pump for everyday people who could use some extra cash if a recession materializes. Anne Gaviola, Global News, Toronto.
As of Friday, foreign nationals will need to register if they visit the United States for more than 30 days, and that includes Canadians. The change, affecting snowbirds, among others, comes after the Canadian government warned travelers to expect a new level of scrutiny when crossing the U.S. border. Taria Isri reports on what Canadians need to know before heading south.
20 million Canadians travel to the U.S. every year. University of Calgary chemistry professor Jennifer Love would have been one of them.
I never, ever thought that I would be concerned about traveling back to my homeland.
The dual citizen turned down an invitation to a conference in Hawaii because of her vocal support for diversity, equity, and inclusion, also known as DEI, a policy President Donald Trump has repeatedly come after.
It concerns me with this administration that I would get pulled aside for additional questioning at best.
There is a risk that they might be denied entry, even unfairly so, for a political reason.
The Canadian government quietly updated its travel advice to the U.S. Individual border agents often have significant discretion. Expect scrutiny at ports of entry, including of electronic devices. If you are denied entry, you could be detained while awaiting deportation.
There was a lot of pressure put on Global Affairs Canada to issue a travel advisory, and they finally did exactly that. And I'm quite sure a lot of debate internally and reluctance to do it.
Oh my God. Last month, a Vancouver woman was held in custody for 2 weeks at the U.S.-Mexico border, while a French scientist was denied entry into the U.S. after border agents searched his phone.
The government can search, seize, look at anything that they want.
Most rules have not changed, says this U.S. immigration lawyer. What has changed is the level of scrutiny.
The government is definitely looking closer.
If you do decide to travel to the U.S., the advice is comply with border agents. Have your documents ready and give yourself extra time. But be aware that you may be asked to hand over and unlock your phone. And if you refuse to do so, you could be turned away. Taria Isri, Global News, Montreal.
The new tariffs also apply to cross-border shoppers, adding an additional 25% surcharge to some products. Those include certain clothing, food, toiletries, and perfumes, unless the value of those goods is within the personal exemption limit, which depends on how long you were away. If you're gone less than 24 hours, you do not qualify for any exemption, and you'll be charged the usual taxes plus the extra 25% tariff. After 24 hours, you can purchase up to $200 without taxes or tariffs, and after more than 48 hours, alcohol and tobacco can be included in up to $800 worth of goods. Turning to the federal election campaign now, where Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is promising to crack down on tax loopholes.
I will end the Liberal two-tier tax system, where elites get loopholes and working people get audited. We will target tax havens, expose offshore fortunes, and bring the money home.
Poilievre says his Conservative government would redirect resources at the CRA from auditing small businesses and charities to targeting wealthy companies not paying their fair share. He also pledged to create a new website that names and shames those found to be dodging taxes by using offshore havens, which he says would include Brookfield Asset Management. That's the investment firm that Liberal Leader Mark Carney chaired before entering politics. The Tory announcement comes one day after Pierre Poilievre received a high-profile endorsement in front of a sizable crowd. Mackenzie Gray reports on the former Prime Minister taking center stage to back the Poilievre campaign.
Even by Pierre Poilievre standards, Monday night's rally just outside of Edmonton was a big one.
Let's bring it home!
Leading the Conservative leader to now consistently brag about crowd sizes.
One last question. When was the last time we had a rally that big in Canada?
But Poilievre might have been aided by a rarely seen special guest.
He is my friend, he is our leader, and he is the next Prime Minister of Canada, Pierre Poilievre.
Former Prime Minister Stephen Harper stumping for Poilievre, something he didn't do for either of the last two Conservative leaders.
Elected, accountable political experience and the capacity for growth with that political experience. That is what Pierre has demonstrated for 2 decades, and that is the single most important characteristic a Prime Minister needs.
Poilievre does have a lot of political experience and not much else. The Conservative leader hasn't had a job outside of politics as an adult, leading Harper to try and blunt Mark Carney's resume.
I say that as the guy who actually did lead Canada through the global financial crisis. I hear there's someone else claiming it was him.
Harper claiming he and then Finance Minister Jim Flaherty were the true architects of Canada's response to the Great Recession, and not the then Bank of Canada Governor Mark Carney, despite Harper saying in 2012 that Carney had been a valued partner as the government has worked to steer Canada away from the worst impacts of the global economic recession. Carney brushed aside the criticism.
We resolved a number of situations. Many people are familiar with that experience. I note that Pierre Poilievre was not at any of those tables.
While the Conservatives have had the largest rallies of the campaign, so far, Jeff, that hasn't translated at the polls, with numerous polls over the past 2 weeks showing that the Liberals are firmly in majority territory.
Mackenzie Gray, thanks. The Liberal leader was also in Western Canada today. Mark Carney's campaign stop did not include any new announcements, but was aimed at shoring up support for his party's housing plan. David Akin reports.
Wait, switch here, you got to press? In British Columbia, campaigning politicians know they need a credible housing policy to win elections.
My government will flip the script on housing with a new strategy to build faster, smarter, more affordably, and more sustainably.
Carney was in the Lower Mainland Tuesday selling his party's $25 billion plan to spur new home construction. But he also responded to a recent independent federal watchdog report that the government of China had organized a disinformation campaign on WeChat aimed at Canadian voters and that some of those WeChat messages supported Carney. The watchdog, though, concluded China's campaign did not threaten the integrity of the Canadian election.
What's important is Canadians get that transparency in real time. And I think it's been a welcome development.
How are you, sir? Carney's next campaign stop will be in Calgary, in a province that has been cold to Liberal pitches for decades. But Liberals think Albertans are warming up to Carney.
There is a lot of opportunity for Alberta, for Canada, and my government will spare no effort to make sure that the people of Alberta, the people of Canada realize those opportunities.
Carney is a son of the West. He was born in the Northwest Territories. He grew up in Edmonton. His mother lives here in BC. And so the Liberals are hoping that Carney's family story can help with some political breakthroughs on both sides of the Rockies. Jeff.
David Akin in Delta, BC. Thanks, David. A night out turns tragic in the Dominican Republic. Coming up, the catastrophic collapse that killed dozens of people at a popular club. In In the Dominican Republic, a nightclub roof collapsed overnight, killing at least 44 people, including former Toronto Blue Jays reliever Octavio Dotel. It happened during a live musical performance while the club was packed with around 300 concert-goers. Rescue workers are now racing to reach dozens of people still trapped beneath the rubble. More than 160 others were injured. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says 2 Chinese men were caught fighting alongside Russia in Ukraine. Zelensky posted this video and says their identification, bank cards, and personal data were found. It's unclear if the men are soldiers with the Chinese military, but Zelensky says there are many more on the front lines. Also today, Russian President Vladimir Putin claimed his military has pushed Ukrainian forces out of a settlement in Russia's Kursk region and launched artillery strikes across the border. Meanwhile, Belgium's prime minister was in Ukraine today and announced a $1 billion aid package and F-16 fighter jets for spare parts. Prince Harry appeared in a London courtroom today as he appeals to have his full-time security detail restored in the UK. The British government downgraded it to a case-by-case basis after he and his wife Meghan stepped down as working royals in 2020. Harry's lawyers claim he was singled out for different, unjustified, and inferior treatment in the government's decision. Harry's father, King Charles, and Queen Camilla, on a state visit to Italy, were honored with a ceremonial flyover by the UK's Red Arrows and their Italian counterparts. The royal couple also greeted visitors outside Rome's Colosseum. The king is set to become the first British monarch to address Italian Parliament on Wednesday. Hot potato still ahead. Farmers in PEI are setting their sights on markets beyond the United States. Prince Edward Island is known as Canada's potato capital, and its farmers have so far been spared President Trump's tariffs. But trade war uncertainty is fueling a search for new customers. Heidi Petracek reports.
Every year, 70 million pounds of Prince Edward Island potatoes are washed, sorted, and bagged at G. Visser & Sons. Up to 80% of them are destined for the U.S. Here, Trump's fixation on tariffs has caused major anxiety.
The solution to the U.S.'s problems is not a trade war with us.
So Randy Visser was relieved Wednesday when the president's tariff announcement left the potato industry unscathed. But Visser knows anything could change at any time.
As of now, we're planning to plant potatoes to supply our customers like we always do, and that's our intention until something comes up that we can't, right?
Planting season is soon, and by the time harvest comes around, 1/4 of the country's potatoes will have come from PEI's red soil, a $1 billion a year industry.
So take it and finish up.
Tariffs would uproot all that, but even just the threat does damage.
There's this possibility of the tariffs being imposed later on at some point. I mean, what do you do? What do you plan?
Trump's criticism of the North American trade agreement he signed in 2018 also means there's a risk the president could force new restrictions on agricultural trade when the agreement is reviewed. That's due to happen next year.
Might they come back to us with some increased demands? Likely. How big our concessions will be remain to be seen.
This pile here, it'll be going out here in the last of April.
For potato growers like Donald Stavert, the potential for tariff trouble makes it hard to plan long term. But
well, you got to be optimistic in this business. Farmers always has tomorrow's a better day, so I guess that's the way I have to look at it.
Ever since Trump's tariff talk began, potato growers have been seeking new markets outside the U.S. They hope that will reap rewards. Heidi Petracek, Global News, Orwell Cove, Prince Edward Island.
Run to the litter. That one's yours, Snow.
Remember Jon Snow's pet on Game of Thrones? Up next, scientists claim they've resurrected real-life dire wolves. Welcome back. This next story could be mistaken for a movie, specifically Jurassic Park. As Mike Armstrong reports, an American biotech company says it's created wolves from a species that's been extinct for about 10,000 years.
Those soft sounds from wolf pups may signal the start of a growing debate.
one that revolves around whether the fact you can do something means you should. A Dallas-based biotech firm has created or recreated 3 dire wolves. Colossal Biosciences used a close cousin, the gray wolf. It took DNA information from dire wolf fossils, compared it to the gray wolf, and tweaked it, building something larger, more muscular, and with light-colored fur.
We edited gray wolf cells to contain those dire wolf DNA variants, and then we cloned those cells and created our dire wolves.
The company calls the process de-extinction, bringing back a species lost to the world, in this case more than 10,000 years ago. Well, some critics question whether modifying a gray wolf is really de-extinction.
Does that make it a dire wolf? No. Does it make a slightly modified gray wolf? Yes. And that's probably about it.
Now, Colossal made headlines recently with a genetically modified mouse, the first step, it said, on the way to bringing back the woolly mammoth by 2028. It created a mouse with fur the texture and color of a mammoth. Colossal's looking for zoos to partner with. It had one very brief talk with the Toronto Zoo before being turned down.
This is a case of living clickbait. Rich multimillionaires creating animal GMOs for self-interest, and I think it's really, really troubling.
There are critics who go so far as to say wolves or mammoths or even dinosaurs aren't the final goal. At some point, the real money will be in genetically modifying humans, if allowed. Mike Armstrong, Global News, Montreal.
Life finds a way, and that is Global National for this Tuesday. I'm Jeff Semple. Tonight's Your Canada showcases Fort Francis, Ontario, a backyard fire pit in Calgary, and a chickadee in Winnipeg's Assiniboine Park. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you tomorrow.